Hey guys, so I'm going to be doing Shakespeare and on women. When one reads Shakespeare regularly, a noticeable pattern in his plays emerges: rebellious daughters and domineering fathers. It is easy to imagine that this patriarchal pattern was one Shakespeare, the man, struggled with. Since he was the father of two daughters, his only son died at age 11. However, we can never really know if Shakespeare was writing out of experience or conjecture. The dominance of fathers usually seems to manifest in itself in the choice of a marriage partner. Brabantio in Othello is humiliated when his daughter elopes with Othello, who is so devastated by her choice that he dies of a broken heart. In Romeo and Juliet, Capulet is already brokered the marriage for Juliet, but what he does not know is that she has already married Romeo. Capulet's reaction to Juliet's aversion to marrying Paris is overtly threatening. "And you be mine, I'll give you to my friend, and you be not. Hand, beg, starve, die in the streets." Another example is in King Lear. Lear has an equally comparing reaction to his daughter while he's negotiating a marriage. But unlike the other women, Cordelia isn't just obedient but honest. Lear tells her, "Here I disclaim all my paternal care, and as a stranger to my heart and me, hold thee for this forever." Oftentimes, the consequences of disobeying a father is being disowned. You see the same domineering fathers in the comedies too, but thankfully too without such dark consequences. In The Taming of the Shrew, Kate's younger sister Bianca can't marry until her older sister does.
"In thy bed, and therefore setting all this chat aside. Thus in plain terms your father hath consented that you shall be my wife. Your dowry agreed on, and will you, nill you, I will marry you."
That is easily solved when Petruchio offers himself as a sacrificial husband. This father-daughter pattern is present in two A Midsummer Night's Dream. Aegeus wants his daughter Hermia to marry Demetrius and is furious when she falls in love with an equally suitable man, Lysander.
"But Hermia, do not be so bitter with me. I evermore did love you, Hermia, did ever keep your counsels, never wronged you, save that in love unto Demetrius, I told him of your stealth unto this wood. He followed you, for love I followed him."
His dominance could turn into violence. "I beg the ancient privilege of Athens. As she is mine, I may dispose of her. What shall be either to this gentleman, Demetrius, or to her death." It's fun to imagine that Shakespeare was writing from experience, since his younger daughter Judith made poor choice in husbands. However, we can never really know what inspired Shakespeare's work. We can only know what we get out of it.
So, that was interesting. Well, I just thought that I would do a bit, of a video with my voiceover. But since everyone has high expectations on our presentation, I thought that I would make this a bit more personal and add more on Shakespeare and women. So, I was doing a bit of research and I found a lot of interesting things about Elizabethan women and how Shakespeare uses the conventions of Elizabethan women and places them in his plays. So, an abundance of forces conspire to keep women in their places. For one thing, most women are denied the chance to be schooled beyond the basics. The most ordinary young Elizabethan woman could hope for is to pick a basic reading and writing skill at the local village school. After that, she was waved goodbye to her brothers every morning as they went off to grammar school if the family could spare them. However, a number of wealthy families, rather than keeping their daughters at home, placed them in wealthy households to be tutored. And Prospero, tutorless on the inhabited island of the Tempest, teaches his daughter himself. "Here I have I, thy schoolmaster, paid thee more profit than other princes can, that have more time for vainer hours and tutors not so careful." Furthermore, domestic skills are the staples of an Elizabethan girl's education. All the rest were unacknowledged. Elizabeth's successor, King James, made this startlingly clear when he was introduced to the accomplished young woman and praised her for her knowledge of Latin, Greek, Hebrew, and his only comment was, "But can she spin?" A girl's knowledge of ancient language was widely considered ornamental. But the last phrase about the permission of their husbands was a sticky bit for many of the Elizabethan women. Whatever freedom she had was granted and taken away by her husband. All the current notions about the ideal marriage gave him this authority. The supposed yielding softness and fragility of women's body was all the proof anyone needed of women's all-round weakness. For most Elizabethans believed firmly that the disposition of the mind is answerable to the temper of the body. In other words, outer appearance was merely a reflection of our inner condition. One Elizabethan spelled it out. A woman in the temperature of her body is tender, soft, and beautiful, so doth her disposition in mind correspond accordingly. She is mild, yielding, and virtuous. For example, as Isabella cries to Angelo in Measure for Measure, "Nay, call us 10 times frail, for we are soft as our complexions are, and credentials to false prince. Indeed, the softer the body, the greater the beauty. Ivory skin, rosy cheeks, round face, rounder hips, and yielding flesh were all requirements for the beautiful woman." Modern standards of woman beauty are in contrast to the tanned, thin, and bony figure, would have struck an Elizabethan fashion plate very oddly indeed. But of course, complexions aren't perfect in age, and nature refuses to deliver. Women resort to various chemicals to conjure the necessary paleness of skin and rosiness in cheeks. They began with a base, and nothing like the smooth and beige skin colour of foundation, but they used a greasy chemical made of white lead and sulfur, which often had a weathering effect on their skin. But not everyone thought that this face painting was a great idea. So for example, the Puritans thought it was an abomination to try and improve one's God's given appearance. Furthermore, those who didn't fit into the shrew category might consider lustful seductiveness, who welcomed any chance to cheat on their husbands. The age's fear of wearing the horns of the cuckold, the man whose wife had committed adultery, was probably the single best anxiety of an Elizabethan married man. For example, Claudio jilts Hero in Much Ado About Nothing on the grounds that she has been carrying on with someone else, and Othello's jealousy and suspicion of his wife Desdemona ends in murder. Nevertheless, the careful reader notices a curious trend in many of Shakespeare's plays. Many of Shakespeare's female characters exercise a rather great deal of subtle forms of power and influence, and often do so in unusual and even subversive ways that challenge traditional gender roles. Although the male characters generally fail to notice or refuse to acknowledge women's authority and influence openly, they are affected by it, often significantly so, and although Shakespeare himself might not have been aware of the dissonance he created, the contemporary reader cannot help but be aware of them, and in many cases to view many of the characters present in several plays of Shakespeare's as some of the main motivators of action, as well as some of the most complex characters overall.